Uncertainty was brought about by Donald Trump's win in the U.S. presidential election, especially in the area of global commerce. His pledge to slap a 25% tariff on imports, including crude oil from Canada and Mexico, two of the United States' main energy suppliers, was one of the most contentious parts of his campaign. The goal of this action was to rectify trade imbalances and safeguard domestic industry. However, it sparked worries about the possible effects on both countries' economies. Trump reiterated his commitment to these tariffs shortly after taking office, declaring that they will go into force today, February 1st. He issued a number of executive orders on his inauguration day, including this one, all of which sparked intense discussion. One such directive included provisions for back pay and the reinstatement of more than 8,000 military personnel who had been released due to their refusal to get the COVID-19 vaccination. Critics contended that this may compromise military health procedures and create an unsettling standard for future vaccination requirements. Trump branded Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and sent soldiers to the U.S.-Mexico border to combat illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and people smuggling. This strategy raised concerns about potential diplomatic problems with Mexico as well as growing border militarization. Trump issued an order to remove limitations on the exploitation of fossil fuels, stop new offshore wind farm projects, and withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, marking a significant change in his environmental policies. Concerns were raised by environmentalists that these steps would worsen the climate catastrophe and impede the development of clean energy. Dissatisfied with the World Health Organization's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Trump also took actions that provoked criticism, including reversing the previous administration's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, targeting gender identity recognition with rigid binary definitions of sex across federal agencies, and withdrawing the U.S. from the organization. The proposed tariffs on Canada and possible retaliatory actions that might hurt the economies of the U.S. and Canada are examined in this video. Together, Canada and Mexico provide more than half of the U.S.'s imports of crude oil, making them vital to the country's energy industry. Over half of all U.S. imports are from Canada, which supplies around 3.8 million barrels per day. The United States refineries get billions of dollars worth of heavy crude oil each year from Mexico, the second largest supply. The crucial supply network may be interrupted if these tariffs go into force, raising energy prices for U.S. businesses and consumers and upsetting the economies of Canada and Mexico. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which binds the U.S., Canada, and Mexico economically, may also be strained by the tariffs. In order to safeguard their economic interests, Canada and Mexico are both thinking of taking countermeasures, which might intensify the trade dispute and highlight the intricate interconnection of the North American energy industry. Reducing or stopping oil shipments to the U.S. is one of Canada's possibilities for reaction. In an attempt to gain pressure, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has even proposed halting power exports to the United States, which would have an effect on American consumers, especially in areas like Michigan and Wisconsin. However, as Alberta is the main producer of crude oil for export to the U.S., Premier Danielle Smith of Alberta has cautioned that reducing oil exports would be detrimental to the Canadian economy. Her stance highlights the possible drawbacks for Canada's energy industry, such as employment losses and unstable economic conditions. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has taken a cautious approach, stressing the importance of a well-rounded and deliberate reaction. In order to safeguard Canada's interests without needless escalation, his administration is looking into other options, like enacting targeted tariffs on U.S. products like steel, aluminum, and orange juice. In the political arena, Ontario Premier Doug Ford declared a snap election for February 27th in an attempt to get a mandate to address the economic difficulties brought on by the proposed U.S. tariffs. Pierre Poilievre, the head of the Conservative Party, has also threatened to take specific targeted action against the U.S. if the tariffs are implemented. highlighting the harm that these trade measures would inflict on both countries. In order to lessen the impact of the tariffs on Canada, Poitier also recommended looking into alternative trading partners. A Canadian businessman started a Canada is not for sale campaign as a sign of national solidarity, and it became well known after Ford donned the hat to a meeting with Trudeau. Tens of thousands of orders were placed as a result of the campaign, which also helped mobilize Canadians against the levies. The possibility of a tariff has caused the Canadian currency to appreciate versus the US dollar, indicating market uncertainty over the complete execution of the tariff. After rising from an almost 5-year low, the loonie increased by 0.2% to trade at 1.4350 per US dollar, or a 0.9% weekly advance. Likewise, Canadian oil prices experienced modest hikes as a result of the levies. With provincial leaders from all parties voicing support for robust responses and solidarity with the federal government, the issue has brought about a rare level of political unity in Canada. While the Canadian population is adamantly against the tariffs, provinces like Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec have united to defend their particular industries. Proposals for consumer boycotts of U.S. products have fueled social media campaigns and demonstrations. Reducing or stopping oil supplies to the U.S. would have major political and economic repercussions for both countries. It may affect U.S. sectors that depend on reasonably priced energy, upend energy supply networks, and increase consumer pricing. States that rely on Canadian crude oil and power, such as Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, would experience shortages and increased energy costs, which would have an impact on the whole economy. Reducing oil exports would have a negative impact on Canada's economy, particularly in Alberta, where oil extraction is a major source of income. It may put pressure on provincial budgets, raise unemployment in the energy industry, and reduce GDP development. Destabilizing political effects might also result from heightened tensions between the federal and provincial administrations, particularly in the event that oil exports are curtailed. Canada is thinking of further retaliatory actions, such as putting taxes on U.S. items that are essential to particular states, in light of the serious threats. This tactic is similar to how Canada responded to earlier U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs in 2018, imposing levies on American goods, including steel, whiskey, and orange juice. Diversifying the energy markets is another possible tactic that may help Canada lessen its dependency on the U.S. while preserving its own economic interests. The conclusion of this trade dispute will probably have a significant impact on the economies and foreign relations of both the United States and Canada as tensions between the two nations continue to rise. In order to increase its access to international markets, especially in Asia, Canada has been giving infrastructure projects like the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion top priority. As a result, Canada would be less dependent on the U.S. as its primary energy supplier, giving it greater negotiating leverage in future trade talks. Canada is also committed to improving energy security at home. Canada wants to become a leader in the worldwide transition to clean energy while reducing its reliance on exports of fossil fuels by increasing energy efficiency and investing in renewable energy. These actions support Canada's long-term environmental goals while also lowering the likelihood of trade conflicts. We would much appreciate it if you could press the like button if you are enjoying this video. Sharing your opinions in the comments has an even greater impact, and it helps us reach a larger audience. Let's get back to it now. Mexico is investigating a number of responses to safeguard its economic interests in response to President Donald Trump's plan to slap a 25% tax on Mexican imports in an effort to decrease migrant arrivals and stop the supply of synthetic fentanyl. According to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico may levy retaliatory tariffs on American imports if these U.S. penalties are implemented. She cautioned that this may lead to an increase in trade that would hurt companies in both nations. Given the close economic linkages between the U.S. and Mexico, She emphasized that tariffs would result in a back-and-forth trade and eventually endanger shared industries. In addition to imposing tariffs, Mexico is attempting to improve its economic resilience by lowering its trade imbalance with nations such as China and drawing in more foreign capital. With a focus on important industries like automotive and aerospace, President Sheinbaum's Mexico First strategy aims to replace certain imports with home manufacture. The goal of this plan is to support Mexico's economy in the face of pressure from international commerce. Trump's planned tariffs may have serious economic repercussions, including the loss of up to 400,000 U.S. jobs and higher costs for American consumers, the Mexican government has also warned. This is because supply chains are intertwined, particularly in sectors like the automobile industry, where parts frequently pass over the U.S.-Mexico border several times while being produced. Marcelo Ebrard, Mexico's Secretary of Economy, is dedicated to negotiating a diplomatic way out of these tariffs. Ebrard highlighted the value of collaboration in addressing common concerns such as drug trafficking and migration, drawing on previous trade discussions. Additionally, he denounced protectionist measures, cautioning that they would seriously harm both economies. By 2023, Canada will still be the largest supplier of crude oil to the U.S., accounting for more than half of all imports. Thanks to infrastructural initiatives like the Keystone Pipeline system and the expansion of Canada's oil sands output, this number has gradually increased from about 2.4 million barrels per day in 2010. The heavier crude found in Canada's oil sands can be processed by U.S. refineries in the Midwest and Gulf Coast, which has led to an increase in Canadian oil imports. Crude oil imports from Canada were over $97.18 billion in 2023, highlighting the significance of this commodity for U.S. energy security. In 2023, the United States purchased over 42 million barrels of crude oil per day from Mexico, making it the country's second-largest supplier. Mexico's ability to maintain current export levels over the long run, however, has come under scrutiny due to worries about its deteriorating production capacity and domestic consumption policies. Many people are worried about the possible economic effects of President Trump's planned tariffs on China, Canada, Mexico, and other important trade partners. Because international commerce is interrelated, protectionist policies are likely to cause major disruptions and retaliatory actions. If enacted, these tariffs may have a significant impact on the world economy, as well as the targeted countries. Approximately 3.8 million barrels of crude oil per day, or 62% of U.S. oil imports, come from Canada, the country's largest supplier. Canada is thinking about reducing its oil shipments to the United States in reaction to the planned tariffs. The integrated energy market would be severely disrupted by such a move, especially in areas that significantly rely on Canadian energy, including Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Potential spikes in oil prices would have a significant negative economic impact on the U.S., raising expenses for businesses and consumers alike. Retaliatory tariffs on American commodities, including steel and agricultural items, may also put further strain on the U.S. economy, perhaps resulting in GDP declines and job losses. The significant stakes for both economies are highlighted by the fact that commerce between the U.S. and Canada reached over $1.1 trillion in 2023. The U.S.'s second-largest crude oil supplier, Mexico, has also hinted that it will levy retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports. In addition to raising costs for American consumers, the Mexican administration cautioned that the 25% tariffs may cause 400,000 jobs to be lost in the U.S. The production of automobiles, whose parts frequently traverse the U.S.-Mexico border before being assembled, is one of the industries in danger. Furthermore, American farmers depend on U.S. agricultural exports to Mexico, including beef, maize, and soybeans. Any tariffs or limitations might have a significant negative impact on these industries. China, another significant target of Trump's trade policy, has proposed rerouting commerce to other markets in Europe, Asia, and Africa, while stopping or restricting shipments to the U.S. With a trade imbalance of around $350 billion, the U.S.-China trade volume in 2023 was close to $600 billion. U.S. businesses that depend on imports of electronics, machinery, and rare earth elements might be negatively impacted by any limitations placed on Chinese exports. China may target politically sensitive industries in its retaliatory taxes on U.S. agricultural products and high-value items like airplanes. One of the biggest trading partners of the United States, the European Union, may potentially take punitive action. With over $1.2 trillion in commerce between the U.S. and the EU in 2023, the EU is a vital supplier of products and services. The EU may react by slapping taxes on American commodities, including whiskey, motorcycles, and agricultural items, as seen by previous trade battles concerning steel and aluminum. Furthermore, the EU may use its clout in international trade policy to mobilize other countries against U.S. policies, perhaps presenting a unified front that isolates the U.S. economically. The U.S. economy would be greatly impacted by the combined retaliatory actions of China, Mexico, the EU, and Canada. Important industries like manufacturing, technology, and agriculture are especially susceptible to changes in global commerce. Increased consumer expenses, fewer export prospects, and employment losses might result from disruptions. Additionally, because global supply chains are intertwined, businesses that depend on cross-border commerce may experience delays and higher expenses. According to economic models, a broad tariff war may slow the development of the U.S. GDP and further destabilize the country's economy. The high risks of Trump's proposed tariff policies are highlighted by the possibility of job losses, interruptions to vital supply chains, and an increase in consumer prices. The results of these trade disputes will probably influence the state of the economy in 2025 and beyond. We appreciate you being here today. To remain in touch with us, please think about liking and subscribing if you felt our content was interesting or thought-provoking. Your help is much appreciated. Feel free to see another video that is now on screen on our channel.